I remember staring at my bedroom ceiling at 3:47 a.m., watching the shadows dance across it for what felt like the 1,000th night in a row. I'd tried everything, sleeping pills that left me groggy, herbal remedies that did nothing, even counting sheep, until I reached numbers that probably don't exist. 30 years of my life. Gone to insomnia. That's over 10,000 nights of tossing and turning, watching the clock tick by minute after excruciating minute. My name is David, and if you're watching this video, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. That desperate feeling when everyone else is sleeping peacefully, while your mind refuses to shut down. Well, I'm here to tell you something I wish someone had told me decades ago. It doesn't have to be this way. And the solution might be simpler than you think. I was just 19 when my sleep problems began. College stress triggered what I thought would be temporary insomnia. But those sleepless nights followed me through my 20s, 30s, and into my 40s. I became what sleep specialists call a chronic insomniac. Every night was the same routine. I'd go to bed exhausted, physically and mentally drained, only to have my brain kick into high gear the moment my head hit the pillow. Suddenly, I'd be thinking about work deadlines, that awkward thing I said in a meeting 3 years ago, or making mental grocery lists at 2 a.m. During the day, I was a zombie. I'd chug coffee just to function, only to crash by mid-afternoon. My memory suffered. My relationships suffered. Even my immune system took a hit. I was constantly catching colds. And the worst part, people would say things like, "Just relax," or "Have you tried chamomile tea?" as if I hadn't tried literally everything under the sun. I visited sleep specialists who prescribed medications that knocked me out, but left me feeling hungover the next day. I tried cognitive behavioral therapy, which helped a little but didn't solve the problem. I even participated in a sleep study where they attached what felt like 100 wires to my head and told me to sleep normally. Right. By my late 40s, I had accepted that this was just my life. Some people aren't good at math. I wasn't good at sleeping. I'd resigned myself to a lifetime of exhaustion. Then came what I now call my sleep breakdown. I had gone almost 4 days with less than 2 hours of sleep each night. I was driving to work, stopped at a red light, and suddenly found myself sobbing. Uncontrollably. I couldn't go on like this. Something had to change. That day, I called in sick to work, something I rarely did despite being constantly exhausted. Instead of pushing through another day, I decided to dedicate it to solving my sleep problem once and for all. I went to the library and checked out every book they had on sleep disorders. Among the stack was a slim volume about mindfulness and sleep that I nearly overlooked. It wasn't written by a famous doctor or sleep researcher, just a former insomniac who had found their way back to restful nights. What caught my attention was that this book didn't promise a quick fix or miracle cure. Instead, it described insomnia not as something to fight against, but something to understand. And that's when I had my first breakthrough realization. For 30 years, I had been waging war against my own sleeplessness, and it was the battle itself that was keeping me awake. The mindfulness approach I discovered was fundamentally different from anything I'd tried before. It wasn't about forcing sleep to happen. It wasn't about tricking my body or mind. It was about creating the conditions where sleep could naturally occur. The first principle was radical acceptance. For decades, I'd been fighting against insomnia, getting increasingly frustrated and anxious with each passing sleepless hour. This approach suggested something that seemed counterintuitive: accept that you're awake. I know how that sounds. If you're struggling with insomnia right now, you might be thinking, accept it. I don't want to accept it, I want to fix it. But here's the thing, the anxiety about not sleeping is often what keeps us awake. It creates a vicious cycle, where worry about insomnia causes more insomnia. The second principle was changing my relationship with the nighttime hours. Instead of seeing them as failed sleep time, I began to view them as peaceful, quiet moments. I stopped checking the clock, which only calculated my sleep deficit and increased my anxiety. The third principle was perhaps the most powerful, bringing gentle, non-judgmental awareness to the present moment. Not trying to empty my mind, which, let's be honest, never works, but simply observing my thoughts without getting caught up in them. So here's the specific mindfulness technique that finally broke my 30-year insomnia cycle. I call it the 3-3-3 practice, and it's something I still use to this day, not because I still have insomnia, but because it's become a comfort ritual that helps me transition into sleep. First, I get into bed at roughly the same time each night. Consistency matters for your body's internal clock. I make sure my bedroom is cool, dark, and quiet, the environmental basics that sleep experts always recommend. Then, instead of immediately trying to sleep, I begin the 3-3-3 practice. Step 1. I bring awareness to 3 things I can hear. Maybe it's the distant hum of traffic, the sound of the heating system, or my partner's breathing. I don't analyze these sounds or judge them as keeping me awake. I simply notice them with curiosity. Step 2. I bring awareness to 3 physical sensations. The weight of the blanket on my body. The texture of the sheets against my skin. The feeling of my breath moving in and out. Again, I'm not trying to change anything, just noticing what's already there. Step 3. I acknowledge 3 thoughts that are present in my mind. Maybe I'm thinking about tomorrow's meeting, or replaying a conversation from earlier, or wondering if I'll fall asleep. Instead of pushing these thoughts away, I simply acknowledge them. I notice I'm thinking about tomorrow's presentation. Then I let each thought be, without following it down a rabbit hole. What makes this different from other techniques I'd tried is that I'm not actively trying to fall asleep. I'm not counting backwards from 100 or visualizing peaceful beaches. I'm simply creating a mental environment where sleep can arrive naturally, on its own terms. The first night I tried this, something remarkable happened. I didn't fall asleep immediately. That would have been too much to hope for after 30 years of conditioning. But something shifted. The anxiety about not sleeping began to dissolve. I found myself feeling peaceful. Not asleep, but not fighting to sleep either. Just resting in awareness. And then, I woke up. It was morning. Somewhere during the 3-3-3 practice, without my noticing the exact moment, I had drifted off to sleep. Now, I'm not a neurologist or sleep researcher, but in the years since discovering this approach, I've learned a lot about why mindfulness is so effective for insomnia. When we experience insomnia, our sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight response, is often activated. Our bodies are in a state of stress, even though we're exhausted. The frustration and anxiety about not sleeping only amplifies this stress response, keeping us alert when we desperately want to rest. Mindfulness practices like the 3-3-3 technique activate the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest response. They lower cortisol levels and reduce the body's stress response. In essence, they create the physiological conditions necessary for sleep to occur naturally. Research published in JAMA Internal Medicine found that mindfulness meditation improved sleep quality in older adults with sleep disturbances more effectively than conventional sleep hygiene education. Another study in the Journal of Sleep Research showed that mindfulness-based interventions reduced pre-sleep arousal and worry, exactly the issues that kept me awake for so many years. But perhaps most importantly, mindfulness changes our relationship with sleep itself. Instead of seeing sleep as something to achieve or conquer, we begin to understand it as a natural process that happens when we get out of our own way. I want to be completely honest with you. This wasn't an overnight miracle cure. The first week I practiced the 3-3-3 technique, I still had some difficult nights. There were moments when the old frustration would creep back in, and I'd think, this isn't working either. But there was a difference. Even on those nights when sleep was elusive, I wasn't suffering the same way I had been for decades. I was learning to rest in awareness, to find peace in the present moment, whether sleep came or not. And gradually, night by night, sleep began to come more easily. By the end of the first month, I was averaging 6 hours of sleep most nights, a miracle compared to my previous 3 or 4 hours. By the third month, I was regularly sleeping 7 to 8 hours and waking up feeling refreshed for the first time in my adult life. Now, 5 years later, I still have the occasional restless night, especially during stressful periods. But insomnia no longer controls my life. I no longer fear bedtime. And when sleep is slow to come, I have tools to work with the experience rather than fight against it. While the 3-3-3 practice was the cornerstone of my recovery from chronic insomnia, I also made other changes that supported better sleep. These weren't the cause of my improvement, but they created favorable conditions for the mindfulness practice to work even better. I established a consistent sleep schedule, going to bed and waking up at roughly the same time every day, even on weekends. Our bodies thrive on rhythm, and this consistency helps regulate the circadian cycle that governs sleep. I created a wind-down ritual for the hour before bed. No screens, no work emails, no stimulating activities. Instead, I read physical books, listened to calm music, or practiced gentle stretching. This buffer zone between the day's activities and sleep made a noticeable difference. I also became more mindful of what I consumed and when. Caffeine after noon was eliminated. Evening alcohol, which I had sometimes used to knock myself out, actually disrupted my sleep cycle, so I limited it to occasional social events. Heavy meals close to bedtime were replaced with lighter options if I needed an evening snack. Exercise became a regular part of my routine, but I timed it for morning or early afternoon. Evening workouts sometimes left me too energized to sleep easily. Perhaps most importantly, I transformed my bedroom into a sleep sanctuary. I invested in a comfortable mattress and pillows, kept the room cool and dark, and removed the TV. The bedroom became a place associated only with sleep and intimacy, not work or entertainment. These lifestyle adjustments aren't revolutionary. Most sleep experts recommend them. But combined with the mindfulness practice, they created a holistic approach that finally solved my insomnia puzzle. Before I wrap up, I want to address something important. While mindfulness transformed my relationship with sleep and ultimately cured my insomnia, it's not a replacement for medical care when it's needed. If you're experiencing severe, persistent insomnia, especially if it's accompanied by other symptoms like loud snoring, gasping for breath during sleep, or extreme daytime fatigue, please consult a healthcare provider. Conditions like sleep apnea, restless leg syndrome, or thyroid disorders can cause insomnia, and they require specific medical interventions. The approach I've shared today works best for primary insomnia, difficulty sleeping that isn't caused by an underlying medical condition. It's particularly effective for insomnia, fueled by anxiety about sleep itself, which was my particular struggle. Even with primary insomnia, working with a sleep specialist or a therapist trained in mindfulness-based interventions can be incredibly helpful. They can provide personalized guidance and help you navigate challenges that might arise as you implement these practices. As I wrap up this video, I want you to know that there is hope. After 30 years of battling insomnia, I had resigned myself to a lifetime of exhaustion and frustration. Finding this mindfulness approach didn't just improve my sleep, it transformed my entire life. When we sleep well, everything changes. Our mental clarity improves. Our emotional resilience strengthens. Our physical health stabilizes. Relationships become easier. Work becomes more manageable. The world literally looks brighter when we're well rested. The 3-3-3 practice isn't complicated or mysterious. It doesn't require special equipment or expensive programs. It's simply a way of bringing gentle awareness to your experience without judgment or striving. It's about making peace with the present moment, whether that moment includes sleep or not. And here's the beautiful paradox. When we stop fighting so hard to fall asleep, we create the very conditions that allow sleep to happen naturally. If you're struggling with insomnia right now, I encourage you to try this approach for at least 2 weeks. Remember that it might not work perfectly the first night, or even the 5th night. Be patient with yourself and with the process. The goal isn't to achieve perfect sleep immediately, but to gradually transform your relationship with sleep. I'd love to hear about your experiences with this technique. Leave a comment below sharing your sleep struggles or successes. And if you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who might be staring at their ceiling right now, wondering if they'll ever sleep normally again. On this channel, we're committed to exploring evidence-based alternatives for common health challenges, especially those affecting us as we age. Sleep quality often declines with age, but that doesn't mean we have to accept poor sleep as inevitable. If you'd like more videos on mindfulness techniques for better health, including specific practices for anxiety, chronic pain, and other sleep disorders, please subscribe to evidence-based alternatives and hit the notification bell. Thank you for listening to my story. Here's to peaceful nights and energized days, something every one of us deserves. Sleep well